All right, everyone, welcome back into another live edition of the Patriots Beat podcast here on the CLNS Media Network, presented by our wonderful friends over at Prize Picks and Game Time. It's Brian Hines back as always with Alex Barth to break down another Patriots loss to the Buffalo Bills this week, 24-21. Surprisingly, a competitive game for longer than I think a lot of us expected, as the Patriots jumped out to an early 14-0 lead, maybe their best half of football in years, quite frankly. And then you saw some of the same reoccurring issues with turnovers, stuff on the defensive side of the football that ultimately let the Buffalo Bills back in that and end up taking the win 24-21 again. So Barth will start kind of where we always start, but maybe the mood is a little different this week with Jerod Mayo and his coaching staff. What were your thoughts? A lot of noise around him and Alex Van Pelt and those guys, but what were your thoughts after, one of their better performances, I would say, in Buffalo yesterday?
Yeah, I think you can argue this was their best well-rounded game of the year, even with the loss. And when you factor in the opponent and all of that, it's kind of hot and cold for the coaching staff. On one hand, I think on both sides of the ball, they came in with a really good plan. I think the team showed up ready, prepared. It was kind of what we were expecting last week coming off the bye. Now, that being said, some of the game management stuff was an issue, especially on offense. It cost them a chance to maybe win that game and pull off the upset. So I think, there was a report from me in Rappaport Sunday morning about how the Crafts want to bring Mayo back. They believe he's the future. They understand it's a multi-year process. And I think I have it right here. As long as now, if things go off the rails, if they really start to struggle, if he loses the locker room, we've seen this thing turn. That was the quote from me in Rappaport. That was not, there were some operational issues, certainly, but that's not an example of it going off the rails. So if that's how ownership felt going into that game, and then you got that game, I think it's probably a good game overall for the coaching staff, especially as it comes to in terms of job security. You can agree with that or not. It's just me assessing the situation. But there were the game management stuff was the big one to me. Like the game planning was probably as good as we've seen all year. The preparation was probably as good as we've seen all year. But the game management still leaves a lot to be desired.
Yeah, especially the game planning. This DeMarcus Covington and Mayo, how much he had his hand in that. Great plan, a lot of man coverage. Like they gave Josh Allen and that Bills offense a lot of fits. I think they were the first defense to hold them under 300 yards at home. They stopped their streak. They've been rattling off 30 points at will, and
Right.
the defense had a good plan. It might have been the first time. Maybe early in the year there was a game, but this really feels like maybe the game that, Covington had as, if you're comparing coordinators, that Covington kind of outcoached Van Pelt and had a better plan coming into this one. But yeah,
I wrote that last night, that this was the first time in a while we could say the defensive coaching staff wasn't the bigger issue, but at least since Drake Maye came in. So,
yeah, definitely.
And that's one game, that doesn't change. I still think if you're looking at this at the end of the year, if they are going to keep Mayo, which coordinator do they move on from? I still think it should be Covington, because overall the defense has come up very short. I would say the offense has kind of made progress as the year has gone on. You even saw some of that progress yesterday, even though you didn't get the ultimate result, but yesterday was a win for the defense.
Yep. But you did mention some of that game management stuff. Do you have any, we had the fake punt, which was finally an aggressive move from Mayo, backed up deep in their own territory at their own 23-yard line. They run the fake punt. Then a few plays later, they faced 4th and 1. They did punt. They had the other questionable punt later in the fourth quarter. Were those some of the ones you were looking at, or did you have any other kind of in that game management department that we can still kind of sit here and critique? Because ultimately they lost the game, and maybe a few of those decisions had an impact.
Yeah, so I had 4 sequences that I thought stood out from a game management point of view. First one comes early in the second quarter. So the Bills score their first touchdown of the game. It's 14-7. And first of all, they have an illegal formation on the kickoff, and the Patriots choose to take the ball to 27 instead of making the Bills free kick, even though they're short, re-kick, even though they're short of the touchback line. We've seen Jerod Mayo make that decision a few times this year. That's not even coaching conservative to me. That's coaching scared. You're worried about what's going to happen. On the ensuing kickoff, you're just assuming you're going to mess it up. So I don't like that. They do start. They struggle to move the ball. They get to a third down. Drake Maye hits Kendrick Bourne on a comeback on the near side on a 3rd and 10. The officials rule it like a full yard short. I thought looking at the replay, they shorted him by at least a half a yard, if not a full yard. I thought it maybe should have been a first down. I didn't love the decision not to challenge that. It's the first half. Timeouts aren't worth as much. I know spot rules are really tough to challenge. That's a situation where I do it because there was a really good look down the line there. Instead, the Patriots elect to punt. That punt drew a lot of criticism. So that's a 4th and 1 from their own, I have it here, 36-yard line.
That was the right after the fake punt, right?
No, this was the drive before.
Oh, okay.
So it was Kendrick Bourne catches that comeback. Remember, he got caught by the defense back in midair. That was the first one where people were like really questioning the decision to punt. I didn't mind the punt there as much as I did not challenging the spot. It wasn't a good spot on the Kendrick Bourne play. There were really bad spots all day, honestly, both sides. Yeah. This was not a good game from this officiating crew. Just a side note, I don't think it changed the outcome, but I would have challenged that if I were the Patriots.
Yeah, I thought Bourne was behind. It was maybe they get like half a yard instead of a full yard, and then maybe they break out the fake punt play there.
Right, maybe if you get that half yard, you go for it.
Yeah, but
would have been a big half yard.
It was kind of weird, then the next drive, I guess, they do the fake punt at the 23, and then they're set up, they get the first down. They really can't take advantage of it. They're facing 4th and 1 at the 34 then, and they punt. Like, if you're going to be aggressive and risk giving the ball back at the 23, wouldn't you kind of keep the foot on the gas there and go for it, 4th and 1?
Well, so this was my next sequence. So like I said, I have 4 of them. So let's rewind a little bit here before that fake punt. They have a 3rd and 1, and they hand the ball off to Antonio Gibson. Gun run, hated the play call. Gun run on a short, got to have a situation. He actually fumbles, and they get stopped. So it's 4th and 1. They run the fake punt. So first off, you had the fumble. They run the fake punt, and so now and they were moving it at that point. I think they'd had a couple first downs before that, if I remember correctly.
Before the fake punt, they had
no, they didn't. They were at their own 23. I'm looking at it right here.
They had one. They had one first down because that was after
first down. That was when they were backed up with Marte Mapu, right?
Yeah, the Mapu interception, which we can talk about that.
But the point is, so they have the 3rd and 1. They go for the fake punt. Great. Do you remember what happened after the fake punt? Do you remember what the next thing was on the game log?
Was that the timeout?
They have to burn a timeout because the punt team was too busy celebrating on the
Mayo was like yelling at them on the sideline.
So after that, they do pick up 8 yards and then they punt again, which okay. But and the second punt, I would agree with you that I would rather they punt there than that previous one that people were mad about after the Bourne play. But this is the second week in a row now where they've had a big play and then had to call a timeout immediately after because they didn't get the play in time. It happened last week in Arizona. They had a 10-yard run by Rhamondre Stevenson, a 15-yard run by Rhamondre Stevenson, a 29-yard run by Antonio Gibson. They're down to like the 12, 13-yard line. You have the Cardinals on their heels. They're gassed. They're backed up. Can't get the play in after 29-yard run. Timeout, and now the Cardinals get a chance to collect themselves, and you lose some of that momentum you gained. Same thing happens in this one. They run the fake punt. So you have the defense. They think they're off the field, like mentally. They're back on the bench. They're starting to go over their checks. Now, suddenly they got to run back on. This is part of it. Like, you should be catching them on their heels off guard. Instead, you can't get your own offense back on the field in time. You can't get the punt team off. You have to burn a timeout. Now that momentum's gone. You can't, you just can't be doing that. You're throwing away momentum you can't afford to lose. And there's a tangible, again, the defense is on the bench. They think they're done. They got to come back out. They're gassed, things like that. For that to happen 2 times in a row is a bad look for the coaching staff. Jerod Mayo uses the term mistake repeater. That, to me, falls under the category mistake repeater. And they had some issues in this game in particular getting the play in on time. We can get to some more of those. I think, and I believe Mayo this morning when he said they happened for different reasons, I do think there's some truth to that. But you got to know, when we hit this, that needs to be communicated. When we hit the fake punt, we don't have time to stand out there and celebrate. Get off, get the offense back on. We need to keep going. They acted like that was the end of the drive, and it wasn't.
It's almost like they're surprised when they do something good. And they're like, oh my God, we did it. And then they're like, crap, we got to keep doing more stuff, like almost in a way, because you're right, it has kind of happened 2 weeks in a row there. So those were questionable. Did you have the punt later in the fourth quarter? I don't know if we're skipping over something in your game management there, but then there was the other punt while we're on punts, the 4th and 5 at their own 46. So kind of near midfield, right around 8:30 left. They're down 10. They decide to punt away. Now they get the ball back, but Buffalo is able to kind of milk, 4 or 5 minutes off that clock. And when you need 2 possessions, that one was, interesting choice there.
So this was bad punt. Bad punt, I would say, of all we've talked about a lot of conservative decisions from this coaching staff this year. Of all the conservative decisions, that is probably the most conservative when you factor in the setting where they're at. The other thing I hate about it, it's like, it's one thing punting there if it's like a 10-3 game and your defense has been rolling and your offense isn't doing much. And it's like, we can get this quick stop. We'll play field position. Like, even then it's 50-50. They couldn't stop the run at all. And did the Bills come out and run the ball? No, because Sean McDermott's an idiot. But they should have come out and run. And the Patriots, lucky they got the ball back at all. So that's what frustrates me, especially about that call, is it's one thing to say we're going to put it in the hands of our defense when your defense is playing well. The defense wasn't even playing well at that point, especially against the run, which, again, the Bills should have done. But I had that sequence. So I referenced the punt. Do you remember why it was a 4th and 5? Delay of game, because once again, they could not get the call in time. They broke the huddle with about 7 seconds left on the play clock.
They had, I forget what the first down play was. They had a 9-yard gain on first down. So they had it 2nd and 1, and then they go, I think it was incomplete pass, delay of game, incomplete pass, and then punt on 4th and 5.
Yep. So that's, again, where you got, and that's on Van Pelt. Get the play in. Get the freaking play in. I know it's loud there. I know it's a tough environment. The clock's right there in front of you. You can see it. It should not surprise you. If that's 4th and 1, I'd like to think they go for it. But they couldn't get the play in time. They didn't want to burn the second half timeout. They took the delay, and they end up, especially if you know you're going to have to punt if it's longer, like, call the timeout then, frankly, on the 3rd and 1, which that, I guess, down 2 scores, that's a tough one. But that was a brutal sequence. And then I had one more just at the end there in the red zone. Like, they get down there. So they get down to the 4 with 2:26 to go. And after the punt, as I go out of focus, after the punt, I'm thinking like, oh man, this is, it sucks. They're not going to get the ball back in time. They need a couple scores, yada, yada, yada. Happy Festivus, by the way. And they get down to the 4 with 2:26 to go. 1st and goal at the 4 with 2:26. And I'm thinking, you have probably 2 plays here. You can score before the 2-minute warning. So you're going to have a chance to get the stop with all 3 timeouts and the 2-minute warning. You might get this thing back with like a minute and a half left, and you can do an actual drive. It's not going to be Joey Sly for a 75-yard field goal. Like, you're going to have a real shot at this. 9 plays, a minute 13 off. They literally took half the clock. It went from 2:26 to 1:13. 1:13 off the clock, 9 plays. And part of the reason for that, the Bills, and this is good smart decision by the Bills. I'll give Sean McDermott this one. They're just sending the house at Drake Maye like every play. And it took 4 or 5 plays for Alex Van Pelt to kind of figure out, let's call a blitz beater. They kept trying to do all this other stuff.
They finally rolled Drake out to the left, and then Pop dropped it, unfortunately. But it was just like deja vu over and over again. They
kept trying to do all this other stuff, and it's like they're sending everybody, just either roll them out or send somebody on a drag behind the blitz. And it took them way too long to figure it out, and it cost them entirely too much time.
I also, like, in the saving time on that one, after one of the PIs, they have 1st and goal at the 1 with 2:14 left. And so I think you should be throwing to the end zone, because that, you could get 3 throws to the end zone at the 1-yard line in before the 2-minute warning. Instead, they go handoff up the gut, which gets stuffed.
And they were like still running on that drive, which was weird.
Now the clock goes right to the 2-minute warning. So you waste all that, 15 seconds there. That could have been 2 or 3 shots to the end zone. And then they come out, and Drake has the play where he drops the ball where Kendrick Bourne was wide open. So that's a sack, and that ticks 30 seconds off. So that, as you said, you get the ball back, or you score with 1:13. So you waste a lot of time. And the runs too, It kind of reminded me, remember, I forget the game specifically because there were a lot of these situations earlier in the year, but they were going on these 2-minute drives and they were like prioritizing the yard on 2nd and 1 and 3rd and 1, and they were trying to run it and they got stuffed a few times. They did that again because they had it, 3rd and 1. Let me pull up the game log here. It was 3rd and 1 with 3:36 left, right around midfield, and they run it and they get stuffed, and then they have to go for it on 4th and 1. And they ran Drake Maye, a designed run, which, that was a nice wrinkle from Van Pelt. There were some good things from Van Pelt. The designed quarterback run game was one of them. But that was just, we talked about that a lot in those end of first half 2-minute drills earlier in the year, how sometimes they prioritize a yard instead of the clock and trying to be a little bit more aggressive. So running on 3rd and 1 there was doing that again. So that wasn't a great, I thought, sequence from Van Pelt. Even though he started the game well, he did do the design quarterback run game which I liked. Did you put the the backwards screen pass lateral, which was an all-around disaster that led to 7 points for Buffalo, but did you put that on Van Pelt, or were you more execution in with the players? And Trey Jacobs obviously missing the cut block, Rhamondre dropping the ball. Where'd you kind of put blame on that one?
I know probably in the minority on this. I put that more on execution. If we're going to rank who is at fault there, I would go 1, Rhamondre Jacobs. I mean, that's just a bad attempt at a block. That's brutal. 2, I go Rhamondre Stevenson, and I thought this at the time, and Jerod Mayo confirmed it this morning. Everybody yelling about why would you call a backwards pass in that situation? That's not what the call is. He's supposed to run a flat route. He's supposed to be, even if not slightly ahead of the quarterback. I think he sensed the defender coming and cheated his route back to try to avoid the contact. That's what that felt like to me. So he runs a bad route. And also, rule of thumb, as I've said on the interceptions the last few weeks, ball hits in both hands, catch it. Plain and simple. Catch it. He had a second to catch that before the defender got there. 3rd, I'd honestly go Drake Maye ahead of Van Pelt. Like, recognize the situation, recognize the back is behind you, throw that thing away, spike it, look for somebody else, something that, like, don't throw that ball backwards in that situation. And then Van Pelt, I mean, look, if they clearly didn't have the personnel to execute that, like, keep in mind, that's after Stevenson. That was after Stevenson's fumble, right? That happened.
Yeah.
So
that was my thing. I get the execution was horrible, but you are asking your right tackle, who's been struggling. He was their worst lineman yesterday against Von Miller and Rhamondre Stevenson, who just fumbled. So maybe not.
But at the same time, like, that's a very simple play.
Yeah.
If you can't run simple. That, there's not much you can run. So I understand the philosophy behind it, because the Bills were getting very aggressive up front at that point. They were not, respecting the run or anything like that. And I think the plan was, or the philosophy behind that call, which I actually don't mind, is we're going to catch them coming off field, throw something quick catch them coming up field, throw something quick behind the rushers, and then we're going to have room to run with blocks up front. Like, I get that. Call it design, like a true design screen then. And I think that was supposed to essentially be a quick screen. But I put more on the players. Like, if you can't execute a simple cut block at this level, 16 weeks into the season, I like,
here we are.
Right. And, like, is it on the coach for understanding the player can't do that? I guess. I think that's a fair baseline to expect from Alex Van Pelt, even with this roster, if we're being honest.
Yep. Were those your
and again, I know I'm in the minority on that. That's whatever, but
no, I get it. Like, it should be a simple enough play that your guys can execute, but there is also the part where, okay, maybe knowing your personnel, that Rhamondre just fumbled, Trey Jacobs has been having a really tough time against a veteran, experienced Von Miller. Maybe don't put the game in the hands of those two guys, especially backed up on your goal line there. So that would be like kind of the counter argument against Van Pelt there. But were those kind of your 4? You said you had 4 game management. Were those the 4?
Yes, those were the 4. So it was the early no challenge punt, the timeout, being unable to get the play in, fake punt, still punt, the 4th quarter punt, and then the red zone. Those were the 4.
All right. So I don't know, if you were Robert Kraft, was that a competitive enough game to make you feel more confident in Jerod Mayo coming back? Because you mentioned the Rappaport report Sunday morning. That was kind of what we've been saying, is unless it goes really off the tracks here these last 3 weeks that Jerod Mayo is expected to be back as head coach. So was that second half, which, we can talk about a little bit more here with Drake Maye, like, was that off the tracks enough that you would have any pause about bringing Jerod Mayo back?
I mean, considering it sounds like they already wanted to bring him back, I certainly think it's enough to validate your prior belief. I don't know that it's a game that if the plan was for him to be out, outright saves him, but I certainly think it's enough to look at it and say, well, we wanted to bring this guy back, and yeah, that's enough to prove that we're right in that belief.
Yeah. I think you could look at it and say, they went to play the MVP on the road and they were competitive. They had a lead in that game. You saw finally a good defensive game plan. Like, they could look at it through that lens and keep their prior thoughts going into the game. But anything else on Jerod Mayo or that coaching staff from yesterday that stood out to you?
Just big picture again, got to get the plays in. That was concerning.
Yeah,
you got to get the plays in. That it was Mike McDaniel-esque at times where I think there were 7 or 8 instances where, and sometimes they got the snap off, but it came close. That's the kind of stuff that'll get you fired. I mean, that's basic stuff. Call the freaking play. That's day one stuff. In week 16 to be having trouble with that was kind of and I get it's tough environment. It's loud there. That can't carry over. Like, that can't happen once next week. That can't carry over. You've got to get that cleaned up now. Because that's the kind of stuff that'll get you fired. That's the kind of stuff that should get you fired. More so than, all right, you have a bad roster and you're struggling to put up points, even though you're like, executing the best you can execute. That's one thing. I don't you can get the play calling. That's independent of the roster.
Yeah. Especially at home the next 2 weeks. Like, that should not be a problem at all, you would hope. And it cost them, as you saw, a couple 4th and 1s, 3rd and 1s going, moving back a few yards there. So that's the coaching staff. We'll get into Drake Maye and a little bit offense, defense here. But before we do that, I want to tell you guys about Prize Picks, where you just pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 1,000 times your cash on America's #1 daily fantasy sports app. All season long, Barth and I submit our Patriots lineups every game day, and you can join in and make your holidays bigger and brighter with Prize Picks, the best place to get real money action while watching your favorite sports. And again, you can win up to 1,000 times your money on Prize Picks. So join now, because this holiday season, Prize Picks is giving away 2 free picks in December, and they're giving away $30+ million in rewards during Picksmas. So download the app today and use code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup on Prize Picks. Run your game. We have Saints going up to Green Bay tonight. So if you want to put any Packers, Saints players, probably
you want to get Jordan Love Toyotathon going.
He sponsored with them. Did you see that?
I saw that.
So either it's going to crash and burn now and they're going to ruin it, or it's going to take off. But make sure you guys head over to Prize Picks for that. Drake Maye and Kayshon Boutte ruined our Prize Picks lineup. It took about 8 plays this week for Kayshon Boutte to catch a 28-yard touchdown and ruin our Prize Picks lineup. But
next time,
speaking of that, it was a good start for Drake Maye. He outdueled Josh Allen in the first half. He led those 2 touchdown drives with the touchdown to Boutte, capping off the first one. The second one, like, overcoming a couple penalties and negative plays, on 3rd and long, 2nd and longs to get them down in the goal line. And then Rhamondre powered it through. But then the second half, you saw some of those turnover issues, the fumble we talked about, the backwards pass, and then the interception in the end zone, where I know there was some contact between Kendrick Bourne and Austin Hooper, but it wasn't a great ball by Drake Maye. He had some pressure in his face, looked like he kind of underthrew it. So another game with an interception. But overall, what did you kind of think of Drake Maye in his first matchup there against Josh Allen?
There were highs and lows. It was kind of one of those games. Again, obviously the throw to Kayshon Boutte is great. The throw over the middle to Kayshon Boutte with the Antonio Gibson blitz pickup was good. On the interception, I know some people point it probably should have been a penalty on the defensive back that hit Kendrick Bourne, but that didn't impact the play. I don't know if Austin Hooper rounded out his route too wide or Drake Maye underthrew him. It might have been both. He also stared him down. Drake Maye's not totally at fault for that interception, but it's not a good play. He also dropped the ball in the red zone on that 9-play saga. So the ball security dipped off a bit. against a better defense, even with the backups in a tough environment. The big thing to me, speaking of the environment, is just that he went into that environment and didn't seem phased. So that is encouraging for the big picture. And when the operation improves around him, he showed you he can go in there and make plays. So that was encouraging. I think it was a step back performance-wise from what we've seen in the last couple games. But again, the growth's not going to be linear. He's still on the upwards trajectory. Let's see what he does against a very good Chargers defense next week. But overall, I think it's a good performance in the big picture.
Yeah. He did have some misses too. Like he dirted that one to Booty over the middle. And now he comes back. And the one you mentioned where he's, Gibson picks up the guy and he's running to his right and he throws it back left, which was just a ridiculous throw. But handling the environment, just marching right down the field to start the game, I thought was encouraging. The cold didn't seem to bother him, and that's something that is going to be prevalent here in New England, and having to go to Buffalo. So he didn't look like Mac Jones in that scuba suit. He just rocked the long sleeves and seemed to handle the cold pretty fine, although he did drop that one ball. But
he looked cold. I don't know that the cold didn't bother him. It didn't impact him.
He did look cold,
but it did. I wonder if he goes to the scuba suit eventually.
The first play, they run a screen to Rhamondre and it gets blown up and he dirts it, and then his hands immediately tuck into his hand warmer.
Yeah,
and I was like, oh, he looks cold. That I don't know how this is gonna go. And now he handled it well, so maybe
right.
He said that was the first time he wore long sleeves, so maybe he adjusts going forward or something. But he didn't seem to really impact the performance too much. Did you like the fact that they ran these design quarterback runs in the zone reads and the quarterback sneaks after, that was popular discussion point this last week. We've been talking about that a lot. Do you feel like they got maybe bullied into that one a little bit, or do you think they kind of approached this as a big game and they said they'll break these things out in big games, and so we just kind of saw them run Drake Maye because they wanted to win and they wanted to be competitive in that?
I think it's probably a little bit of both. I don't really care why they did it. They did it. I'm happy that they did it. And I thought it was a good, they picked their spots. They didn't overdo it either. We'll see how that grows. I guess the Chargers game will answer that question. Because if they keep doing it, then maybe that, then I think they actually believe it's the best thing to do. If they stop, it feels more like the Bills game was, all right, we did it. You can shut up about it now. So we'll see next week. But no, I'm glad that we kind of finally got to see what that looks like, even if the first one was called back on a hold, because it wouldn't be the 2024 Patriots if it didn't, frankly.
Yeah. Yeah, you can see how it works. He should have scored on the first one, but he bounced it to the outside, and then he gets the hold, and then they convert a 4th and 1 where he picks up 13 yards. So you see the benefits of it. Hopefully, that's something that really next year they really start making part of this offense. And again, those key spots down by the goal line, 4th and 1. We don't have to do it 10, 15 times a game, but just those key spots to help the offense. But on the topic of ball security, Rhamondre Stevenson lost his 7th fumble. They put him back in the game, which was kind of surprising because he fumbled against the Cardinals, but they recovered it. So it wasn't a loss, but you could kind of see this brewing again. And then he loses one. Now, Antonio Gibson also lost a fumble, but he managed to recover it. What are you doing with this running back room, next week in LA? Are you sitting Rhamondre down, or do they kind of need him out there? How are you viewing that?
I'm still playing Rhamondre Stevenson. I'm not sitting him outright, but the other thing is Antonio Gibson's been a better player over the last month. So, and I know he fumbled yesterday, but that doesn't help Stevenson's case either. Stevenson's going to be here next year because of his contract. You want to allow him to get right, but if you want to try to steal one of these last 2 games, Gibson's your better option. And again, I'm not sitting Rhamondre Stevenson outright because you can't ask Gibson to play 100% of the snaps. You can't ask any running back to do that in the modern NFL. And they don't have a ton of depth, especially if JaMychal Hasty's hurt. So I think Gibson as the spellback makes sense, and it allows him to kind of work on what he needs to work on. But Antonio Gibson should be RB1 for the final 2 weeks of the season. He should be getting the majority of the work.
And they signed Terrell Jennings. So I don't know. They have another, if they want one of these more physical bruiser backs to take carries away from Rhamondre, they could go to Terrell Jennings because that's more of that mold and that play style. But yeah, Gibson he's still been really good. You can see the explosiveness with the ball, and then the pass pro opened up a few plays yesterday for Drake Maye and pass pro. So I wouldn't be opposed to just kind of sitting Rhamondre down, because 7 fumbles is absurd. Is that Stephen Ridley level? What was Stephen Ridley's most?
So I meant to look this up today. I've seen people making the Stephen Ridley cut. Now Stevenson's a better runner than Ridley was. Like, he's a better running back. Stevenson he never fumbled more than 4 times in a season.
Wow. And
it was as a rookie 1, 4-4, then 0 in 6 games. That was his last year with the Patriots. And then 0 in 8 games, 0 in 1 game, 0 in 2 games, 2 in 10 games. But he also, the games he never had more than 36 carries in a season after he left the Patriots. So I guess that doesn't really count. But with the Patriots, he had 649 carries and 9 fumbles. I'm going to look this up. Do we think Rhamondre is more or less than 649 carries with the Patriots? Same number of years.
649?
Yeah.
I'll go more. They ran him into the
No, it's more. It's a little more, 704. But he has
704.
Yeah, he now has 14 fumbles and 704 carries.
14.
So the ratio is, hang on. 14 fumbles and 709 carries. Oh, I did that backwards. 709 carries and 14 fumbles. What?
Math
on the air, right? That's right. So Stevenson is averaging a fumble once every 50 carries. Ridley 649 over 9. He's fumbling almost more than 20 carries. Stevenson is 50 carries per fumble. Ridley was 72 per fumble.
Wow. And Stephen Ridley was like exiled when he was here,
right,
by the fans. So this is worse. So,
but this year skews the number. He had So he has as many fumbles now with this one. He had 7 in his first 3 years total, and now he has 7 this season.
So, Jerod Mayo didn't rule out maybe a change there next week. So we'll keep an eye on that and see what happens.
I wouldn't expect him to be outright sat though, because they put him back in that game.
Definitely. Would you put him back in?
No.
Yeah, I wouldn't. I would would have rolled with Gibson there for the rest of that.
I wouldn't have last week. I would still play him next week in a limited role, but I would not have put him back in that game against the Bills.
Yeah,
I think they put him back in after the drop backwards pass too. I certainly wouldn't have put him back in after that.
I remember he came back in and he caught like a little screen for like 13 yards. Yeah, he fumbled. The fumble was their first possession of the second half, and then Drake had the interception where he caught the 13-yard screen the play before, and then they came back out and he had a run and then the fumble on the backwards pass. So he was back up. So he was back on the field for 3 plays after the fumble, and they had the backwards pass going there with Stevenson. So we'll see what happens there. Another guy whose workload was decreased was Jalen Polk. He was averaging 24 snaps the last 5 games. Played 3 snaps yesterday. Didn't really open the door for Javon Baker to play anymore. He played 8 snaps in his first game back from the concussion. Are we just done with these guys for this year? Do you think is this it for this year at least?
It certainly seems like it. The caveat is, like, if somebody gets hurt, I think it's really interesting that Polk played less than Baker. So is Baker now the 4th receiver? Is Baker now the next man up? If somebody gets hurt or something, in one of these last 2 games, is Baker actually now closer to playing time than Polk is? But I think they're pretty much done for these guys this year. Polk will be back on the team next year because he's a 2nd-round pick, and they're just not going to cut bait with him. Baker, I don't know. We might just be done with him. That may go down as a wasted pick, which would be a shame because, again, they had 2 4th-round picks back-to-back. They should have used one of those to move up in the draft, either back into the 1st round or up from the 3rd when that run on tackle started to get a real left tackle. But it feels like these guys, you're just going to have to write them off. Did you saw the graphic they put up last night during Sunday Night Football of the 3 Washington receivers?
I didn't see the graphic, but I know Jalen McMillan has been playing very well.
He had like as slow of a start as Jalen Polk did. I think they're like the first 10, 11 games. He was doing like nothing in Tampa. And it was because people talk about, look what Michael Penix did.
He at least had like Chris Godwin ahead of him, right?
Sure. But no, he's really gotten it going now. He's turned the
Yes.
corner and he's starting to make plays.
I think he has touchdowns in like his last 3 or 4 games. So
Sounds right.
he's been pretty good. Polk definitely the worst of that kind of Washington trio. I don't know, you see bust is obviously an easy word to throw out there. He will be back next year. I'm not ready to like completely write him off because I do think most of it or pretty much all of it is mental, right? Like this guy was supposed to be like a high floor player. And we saw it during training camp. I know it's different training camp to games that he can play, but I do think a lot of it is mental. So maybe I don't want to go in the next year having to count on him. Like that's poor roster management if you're counting on Jalen Polk all of a sudden resurging next year. But I don't want to completely throw the bust label on him yet because I do think a lot of it is mental, but definitely
I just
hasn't been good. He would be an outlier, as we've said a lot, if he comes back to have any sort of NFL success. Like that's how rookie wide receivers go. The first year is really indicative on that stuff, but it does seem to him like this is all pretty much mental.
it's just tough because when you look at the track record for young receivers and putting up the kind of production or lack of production he has, there's just not that many guys that turned it around from a start like this.
Yep. I will give credit to Kayshon Boutte. It was a good bounce back game from him. I was ready to just kind of put him on the bench, and he responded with a really pretty solid game there. So credit to Kayshon Boutte. Tight ends, just usual performance from Hunter Henry and Austin Hooper. Austin Hooper, Jerod Mayo said should be okay after that shot to the head. So hopefully no reoccurring symptoms or anything as the week progresses there for Austin Hooper. But offensive line, we mentioned Trey Jacobs. Are you ready for Caden Wallace if he is healthy and ready to go?
Oh yeah. I mean, how are you not at this point?
Yeah.
And we'll see. It's just a matter of him being healthy. It'd be great to get a look at him this year, but kind of running out of time.
Definitely. All right. Anything else on that O-line or offense in general yesterday?
I mean, I just like, we talked about Gibson enough. I think he's been really good.
Yep. All right. We'll wrap up with defense and a little special teams. Before we do that, I want to tell you guys about Game Time. We all love going to football games in the fall, in the winter, and now that it is winter, we have basketball games, we have hockey games to go to, and we go to any games with Game Time. And Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets to see your favorite teams play live even easier because Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Patriots end the season with 2 home games at Gillette Stadium. So on Game Time right now, cheapest get in for Chargers at Patriots on Saturday. Remember, they're playing Saturday this week, is $36, or you can move down to the lower level, 5 rows up, $94 on the Game Time app. Looking ahead to the Bills, $40-ish is the cheapest on the Game Time to end the season there. So make sure you guys head to Game Time for their lowest price guaranteed and other in-app features such as seat views, all-in pricing, and of course Game Time Picks, which makes it easier to save more on sports, concerts, comedy, theater, and any other tickets you are looking for. So take the guesswork out of buying your tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code CLNS for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game Time. All right. On the defense, we mentioned it was a good plan from DeMarcus Covington and Jerod Mayo. A lot of man coverage. Buffalo, they don't have their Stephon Diggs anymore. They have Khalil Shakir and Keon Coleman and Mac Hollins. So man these guys up, Amari Cooper. And I thought the Patriots corners played spectacular. Christian Gonzalez was his usual self. Just old time game for Jonathan Jones, looked like himself, locking down Khalil Shakir. Alex Austin even got his hand on a pass or two there. Marte Mapu even was making plays. So what do you think of that Patriots secondary and their performance under that game plan yesterday?
Mainly Jonathan Jones. I mean, he's the reason it was able to go, right? They wanted no part of Christian Gonzalez. Allen barely looks Gonzalez's way. I think that was like a concerted effort from the Bills that we're just not going to throw near this guy.
One target, and it came in the fourth quarter. So,
and it was kind of they sort of schemed the guy open. It wasn't, they ran sort of a pickish play, I guess. But the only way that works, other guys have to step up, and Jonathan Jones was excellent. I thought Alex Austin was good too. But if they can get that kind of performance with Jonathan Jones is a free agent at the end of the year. He's one of the few guys last year they did not re-sign. And he's obviously had a rough year, but a couple more games like that, and you're gonna have to take a longer look at him going into the offseason.
Yeah, definitely. So good game from there, especially, with Marcus Jones out. You figured that would have been the Marcus Jones assignment, Khalil Shakir. So good to see Jonathan Jones step in there. Marte Mapu also stepped in, a healthy scratch the last 2 weeks. We saw Jabril Peppers pop up on the injury report Friday, so he was inactive. Marte Mapu back in the lineup. He had the interception, which shouldn't have ran out, but he had the interception.
Josh Allen threw it right to him. I still give him a down for the game because Josh Allen threw that one right to him. He had another should have been interception he dropped. And I don't know what the hell he's doing running that out. That was never a good idea.
That was questionable. He did the coverage play. I thought the coverage was better for him kind of on the back end. The play, the other one, he should have had the interception, but it was still, I thought, a good play to drive on the ball and break it up. He also had a couple pressures as a pass rusher. So I thought it was a net positive game for him. That it still was a bad decision to run that ball out. You get wanting to make a play, and if you want to make a play, like just go. Like the hesitancy there really cost him of going to make a play and then pulling back up, and then you get tackled at the 1 yard line.
And there's a guy right there too. It's not like there's nobody near him, and somebody on the Bills made an unbelievable play to get to him and tackle him when they did. Like there's multiple offensive players right around him.
Yep. So we'll see how they want to keep using him over the last 2 weeks. If Peppers is available or not, we'll see more. Maybe a Marte Mapu. Up front, the run defense Jerod Mayo finally admitted it was a problem this morning and yesterday, I think. So it wasn't good again. 172 total yards, over 6 yards a carry. Even if you take out the 46-yard run, they were still right around 5 yards per carry, as Jerod Mayo probably wanted to tell us, but he didn't. So the run defense still an issue. More of the same stuff too, just second level getting washed out. It's not good enough from that run defense. And you saw Buffalo, they should have done it more, but they took advantage of it when they did.
And missed tackles. Kyle Duggar, another rough game. There was one play he made where he stepped up. They threw it to, I think it was Kincaid in the flat. It was Kincaid or Knox in the flat.
Came downhill,
and it stuck him. And I was like, there's Kyle Duggar. I haven't seen that guy in weeks.
I know that guy.
Right. Where's that guy been? And then he whiffs on the big James Cook run. And the run defense just is still not what it needs to be. It's not even close.
Yep. Yeah. And Buffalo, they gave their backs 4 carries in the first half, which I thought was absurd.
The Bills are a poorly coached football team.
Yeah.
And yesterday should make that blatantly clear. And that's why we need to calm down talking about this team as are they a Super Bowl contender? Sure. The favorite in the AFC, they can't figure it out. I came on here Thursday, Brian, or Wednesday. You remember we had this conversation about if the Bills are smart, they'll just run the ball, get out of there without incident. If they're smart. And then I said, but that's probably giving Sean McDermott too much credit. Instead, up 2 scores with the clock running, he goes and gets his quarterback's hand broken. And he already had one broken hand. Now the other one's messed up. We're probably not allowed to talk about that because it hurts Joshy Poo's MVP candidacy. But what a dumb
he was
approach.
Doing all that with a broken hand. That probably helps.
He's doing. Nobody who gets shut down by this Patriots defense like that should be an MVP. And that includes Joe Burrow, who probably should be the MVP, but he's on a losing team. Nobody gets shut down by this Patriots defense like that as the most valuable player in the league. I think that's a fair take.
Hey,
give it to Lamar, give it to Barkley. He didn't look like an MVP.
Lamar had a bad game against the Raiders earlier in this year. If you want to go that
Patriots,
but
it's not the Patriots. I don't have to watch the Raiders every week. I don't know what their whole deal is.
They
won yesterday.
That's true. Mac Jones moved.
All right, so according to my logic, Mac Jones can't be MVP. So I feel like my logic's pretty good.
There you go. Mac Jones moving the Patriots up in the draft order. Shout out him. But
Chad Ryland too.
Chad Ryland. All the former guys are helping the case. But,
Jack Jones make a play yesterday?
No, I think he got toasted by Brian Thomas.
So almost all the former guys.
Almost. Actually, if I'm thinking of it right, I saw just the clip on Twitter. He might have got toasted, but then Mac Jones sailed the pass out of bounds. So Mac Jones helping the
that was Patriots practice last year every day.
100%. Last thing I just had back on the defense, they did that kind of mush rushy thing where they wanted to just contain Josh Allen, but Jeremiah Farms, 5 pressures and a sack. Just shout out him for being kind of their one lone source of pressure. I know they're not pinning their ears back all the time, all game with that sort of strategy, but I thought Farms was good yesterday. So anything else you have on the defensive side of the ball there, or we can wrap this up?
Is Christian Ellis a top 10 player on this team? Just in terms of like what the tape shows. Obviously, there's guys who are more talented in theory, more talented on paper. But when you look at what guys have done this year in terms of doing their job, Christian Ellis, one of the best 10 players on the team. Like, I don't know that he's out there making plays, but in a season that's been about guys being in the wrong spot and screwing up fundamentals, he just always seems to be where he needs to be and makes the plays that are there to be made. He had a couple good tackles in space yesterday. I think the perfect example of this, he had a pass breakup that hit off the back of his helmet. So, like, did he really do anything? No, but he was in the right place at the right time. He was there in coverage. I don't know that he's the answer that they need at linebacker next to Bentley, but as a depth linebacker, special teams player, he's a restricted free agent, so he'll probably be back. But that's a guy who should be back. He's sneaky been one of their best players this year.
Yeah. Yeah, he's probably right in that, fringe, like 7 to 10 range.
And look, that says more about the roster than it does about him. But like,
I was gonna say there's not much competition, but
who's been a better player this year, objectively, Christian Ellis or Kyle Duggar?
Probably Christian Ellis.
Right. Who's been a better player this year, Christian Ellis or Keon White?
Ooh, that one would be tough.
All right, Christian Ellis or Rhamondre Stevenson?
Christian Ellis.
Right. So it's like he's kind of just shown up and done his job. And again, this says more about the team than it does him, because that's saying a lot for this team, but you need reliability. Like, this team needs guys who are reliable, and Ellis isn't a high tier playmaker, and those guys are going to have to come externally, obviously, but Ellis should stick around because he gives them a guy that you can kind of set your watch to. And you can't really say that about most of the guys on the roster.
If he's like a sub linebacker that comes in on passing downs next year, like, that'd be a perfect role for him. And good for him. Like, this is a guy they claimed last year as a pure special teamer, and he taking the most of his opportunities that are available to him. So good for Christian Ellis. Seems like he's kind of worked his way into what you hope is a niche role, not a 3-down linebacker, but seems like he could be sticking around here. So wrap up just special teams, not too much, just the fake punt, which we talked about. Big return by Antonio Gibson, not much action from Joey Sly, no field goal attempts. Really nothing there unless you have anything, right?
I would just say on the fake punt, like, I thought, and I know we kind of talked about this earlier, I thought the Bills reacted really well to that. Like, they
who didn't react well to that. Whoever was announcing the game, one of the worst fake punt calls.
It was Ian Eagle.
Was it Ian Eagle? Yeah, it was Eagle and Charles Davis. You wouldn't even have known they were running a fake punt.
Oh, and the cameraman. The cameraman did not react to it well either. Neither, honestly, did the Patriots punt team when they didn't get off the field after they got the first down. But the Bills reacted really well, and the Patriots still got it. That was just high-level execution, which is not something we've been able to say about this team a lot this year.
Yeah. Yep. Shout out Del Pettis making the play. He's been kind of an underrated rookie at times. So nice to see him get rewarded from that personal protector spot to get the first down.
All of this. That was a pretty solid onside kick.
That's back-to-back 2 good onside kicks that they haven't been able to recover.
As much as the college playoff sucked, like, there were a bunch of good onside kicks there. There were a couple good onside kicks in the 1 o'clock window. This was a very strong weekend for onside kicks. Bad weekend for punting.
Wow. What a weekend, onside kicks, baby.
It was, though.
You're right. Now that I'm thinking about it, there were a lot of good onside kicks. Are people starting to figure out the onside kicks?
Maybe.
Who knows?
Maybe because it's cold, the ball's harder. It takes more unpredictable bounces.
Someone's got to come along and just be like insane at onside kicks. Like, someone's just got to master it so it bounces right up.
Every time somebody does that, because it's not, you can't master the bounce, because footballs don't. Yeah. It's more about the way you kick it. Like, who is it who had like the behind the leg heel kick? Every time somebody figures out a way to make it somewhat reliable, they outlaw whatever that guy's doing.
Lame.
Remember that teams would try like the 2 kickers and keep you off guard on which way they were going, things like that.
Yep. So who knows? Maybe they'll actually recover one. Between the onside kicks and the fumble luck, just none of it is there for the Patriots. And
They
good teams
did
make
not get not much puck luck for the
yeah,
Patriots.
good teams make their luck, so makes sense. But we will wrap it up there. Again, 24-21 loss to the Buffalo Bills. Patriots 3-12 now on the year. But the bright side, as we kind of mentioned, moving up in the draft order. They now sit at number 2 as the Raiders beat Mac Jones and slid down. So 2 weeks left, 3-12, but currently holding the number 2 pick in the draft. So they will now turn their attention to the Los Angeles Chargers again on Saturday. We will be back on Thursday, regular schedule. Probably, maybe we'll let you know on the time. Patriots CLNS on Twitter for time. Patriots Press Pass on YouTube. Make sure you are subscribed. Turn on your notifications on. In the meantime, you can follow Barth on Twitter at RealAlexBarth. Head over to 985thesportshub.com for his Patriots coverage over there. And you can follow me on Twitter at I am Brian Hines and head over to patspulpit.com for our Patriots coverage there as well. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in with us tonight. Have a wonderful holidays, and we will see you guys on Thursday.